The auction house erupted with laughter when Clara Gillespie stepped onto the wooden platform, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it over their cruel jeers. It was 1876 in Sweetwater Creek, Colorado, and the annual bride auction was the social event of the season, though for Clara, it felt more like a public execution of her dignity. "Too much woman for any man to handle," shouted one red-faced rancher from the back of the crowded room. "Might need 2 horses just to carry her home," another called out, slapping his knee as those around him howled with laughter. Clara clutched her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, wishing she could disappear into the floorboards beneath her feet. At 23, she stood taller and broader than most women in the territory. Her curves, which her late mother had once called generous, were now the target of ridicule from strangers who saw her as nothing more than an oddity, a spectacle to mock. The auctioneer, a thin man with an oversized mustache and watery eyes, looked uncomfortable but pressed on. "Now, gentlemen, let's start the bidding for Miss Gillespie. She's a fine cook and comes from decent stock. Who'll give me $10? Silence fell across the room, broken only by muffled snickers. $5? The auctioneer tried again, his voice faltering. Clara's cheeks burned with humiliation. She'd never wanted to participate in this degrading tradition, but after her father's death 3 months prior, leaving her with nothing but debts and a foreclosed homestead, she had few options in a territory where women couldn't own property or find decent work. "I'll give you 50 cents for each pound," someone shouted, causing another wave of laughter to sweep through the crowd. Clara closed her eyes, willing the tears not to fall. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Then suddenly, a deep voice cut through the cruel laughter like a knife. $300. The room fell silent as everyone turned toward the source of the voice. At the back of the auction house stood a tall cowboy, his face partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat. He stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him like water around a stone. "I said $300, he repeated, his voice calm but commanding. "She's the only one I want." Clara opened her eyes to find herself staring into the most intense blue gaze she'd ever seen. The man who'd spoken was now standing at the front of the crowd, one hand resting casually on his gun belt. Though dust covered his clothes from the trail, there was something undeniably striking about him, something that made every other man in the room seem smaller somehow. Well," the auctioneer stammered, clearly shocked by the unexpectedly high bid. $300 from Mr. He trailed off, looking at the stranger questioningly. "Archer. Adam Archer," the cowboy said, never taking his eyes off Clara. $300 from Mr. Archer, the auctioneer announced, finding his voice again. "Going once. Going twice. Sold." As Clara stepped down from the platform on shaking legs, whispers erupted throughout the room. Why would a man like him, handsome, confident, clearly well off, want her when he could have had any of the petite, fair-haired girls who'd gone before her? Adam Archer moved forward, meeting her at the bottom of the steps. Up close, she could see that his face was weathered by sun and wind, with faint lines at the corners of his eyes suggesting he was in his early 30s. There was no mockery in his expression, no hint of cruelty or jest. "Miss Gillespie," he said with a slight tip of his hat. "If you'll come with me, I have a wagon outside." Clara found her voice at last. "Why did you do that? $300 is an outrageous sum." A small smile touched his lips. "Perhaps, but I know value when I see it, even when others are too blind to recognize it." He extended his arm to her. "Shall we?" With all eyes in the auction house watching, Clara hesitantly placed her hand on his offered arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath his shirt sleeve. As he guided her through the crowd and out into the bright Colorado sunshine, she couldn't help but wonder what fate awaited her with this mysterious stranger who just purchased her future with 3 simple words. "She's the only one I want." Little did Clara know that those words would change everything, not just for her, but for Adam Archer as well, a man with secrets of his own and a past he'd spent years trying to outrun. The bright sunlight momentarily blinded Clara as they stepped outside the auction house. The dusty main street of Sweetwater Creek bustled with afternoon activity, horses and wagons passing by, shopkeepers sweeping their boardwalks, children chasing each other between buildings. "My wagon is this way," Adam said, guiding her toward a well-maintained buckboard hitched to 2 handsome bay horses. Clara walked beside him in stunned silence, acutely aware of the stares following them. She knew what people were thinking. What would a man like him want with a woman like her? The same question echoed in her own mind. When they reached the wagon, Adam helped her up to the seat with surprising gentleness, his strong hands respectful as they supported her elbow. The wood creaked beneath her weight, and Clara winced, anticipating a cruel comment. Instead, Adam simply climbed up beside her and took the reins. "These boards need replacing soon anyway," he said matter-of-factly. "Been meaning to get around to it." Clara studied him from the corner of her eye. His profile was strong, straight nose, firm jaw darkened with stubble, those startling blue eyes focused on the road ahead. Nothing in his manner suggested he regretted his impulsive purchase. "Mr. Archer," she began carefully, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't." She took a deep breath and straightened her spine. "If you're expecting certain services from me, I should make it clear that I won't." "Miss Gillespie," he interrupted, his tone gentle but firm, "I didn't buy you for any such purpose." "Then why?" she pressed. $300 is a fortune. You could have had any woman in that auction for 1/10 of that price." Adam guided the horses out of town before answering. The buildings of Sweetwater Creek fell away behind them as they followed a winding dirt road that led northwest. "I need a housekeeper," he finally said. "Someone to cook meals, tend the garden, and help maintain my ranch house while I work the land. Nothing more." Clara wasn't convinced. There are plenty of women who could do that. Smaller women, prettier women. "Perhaps," he agreed, "but none with your reputation." "My reputation?" she repeated, confused. "Your father was Samuel Gillespie, wasn't he? Best horse breeder in 3 territories before his luck turned." Clara nodded slowly, a pang of grief touching her heart at the mention of her father. "I knew him slightly," Adam continued. "Bought 2 horses from him years back. Good man. Always spoke highly of his daughter, who could cook like an angel, garden better than most farmers, and had a way with horses that rivaled his own." He glanced at her briefly. "That's the reputation I meant, Miss Gillespie." Warmth bloomed in Clara's chest at his words. Her father had always been proud of her skills, even when others saw only her size. "Call me Clara, please," she said softly. "If I'm to be your housekeeper." "Clara," he repeated, and something about the way he said her name made her pulse quicken. "And I'm Adam." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of the horses' hooves creating a soothing backdrop to Clara's tumultuous thoughts. The landscape opened up around them, rolling hills dotted with pines, distant mountains hazy on the horizon, wildflowers painting patches of color in the green meadows. "How far is your ranch?" she asked eventually. "About 2 hours' ride. Place called High Meadow." A hint of pride entered his voice. "It's not the biggest spread in Colorado, but the land is good. Plenty of water, good grazing." "And you run it alone?" Clara couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Most ranches required several hands. I have 2 hired men who help with the cattle and horses. Brothers Nathan and Samuel Blackwood. Good workers. They live in a cabin near the corral." Adam adjusted his hat against the sun. "But the house?" That's been empty since my mother passed last winter. I'm sorry for your loss, Clara said softly. Adam nodded his acknowledgement. She was ill for some time. After she died, I realized how much she'd done to keep the place running smoothly. The house has suffered without a woman's touch. He cleared his throat. That's why I was in town today. Hadn't planned on attending that auction, but when I heard about it at the general store. He trailed off, seeming uncomfortable. So it was just coincidence? Clara asked, trying to understand. Adam's hands tightened slightly on the reins. I wouldn't call it that. More like providence, perhaps. The wagon crested a hill, and Clara gasped at the view that opened before them. A wide valley stretched below, emerald green with spring grass. A creek wove a silver path through the center, and nestled against the base of the next rise sat a two-story house, sturdy and welcoming, with smoke curling from its chimney. Nearby stood a large barn, corrals, and several smaller outbuildings. Cattle dotted the hillsides, and a herd of horses grazed in a fenced meadow. High Meadow, Adam announced simply. It's beautiful, Clara breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. Adam's expression softened as he looked out over his land. It is at that. As they descended into the valley, Clara felt a stirring of hope in her chest, something she hadn't experienced since before her father's death. Perhaps this strange turn of events was indeed providence. Perhaps here, away from the cruel whispers and mocking laughter of town, she might find a place where she could belong. The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and Adam set the brake before jumping down. He came around to her side and offered his hand to help her descend. Clara hesitated, acutely aware of her weight. I can manage, she said. Adam didn't lower his hand. I've no doubt you can manage many things on your own, Clara, but there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered without conditions. Something in his steady gaze made her reach out and place her hand in his. His grip was firm and sure as he helped her down from the wagon, not flinching or straining as her full weight momentarily pressed against him. Welcome to High Meadow, he said quietly when her feet touched the ground. I hope you'll find peace here. Clara looked up at the house that was to be her new home, then back at the man who had rescued her from humiliation and possibly something much worse. For the first time that day, she smiled. Thank you, Adam, she said simply. He smiled back, and in that moment, with the setting sun painting the world in gold around them, Clara felt something unexpected flutter in her heart, something that felt dangerously like hope. The house was larger than it had appeared from a distance, solidly built with square-hewn logs and a covered porch that wrapped around two sides. Adam carried Clara's small trunk containing the few possessions she'd managed to save before the bank took her father's property and led her through the front door. Inside, the main room was spacious but clearly suffering from neglect. A layer of dust covered the furniture, dirty dishes were stacked on a table, and clothing was draped over chairs. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, currently cold and empty. I apologize for the state of things, Adam said, setting her trunk down near the stairs. As I said, since Mother died. He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely embarrassed. Clara surveyed the room with a practical eye. It's nothing that can't be put right with a bit of work, she assured him. Despite the mess, she could see that the furnishings were of good quality, and the house itself was solid and well-designed. Let me show you to your room, Adam said, lifting her trunk again. Then I'll need to tend to the horses. He led her up the stairs to a bedroom at the back of the house. Unlike the main room below, this space was clean and prepared, with fresh linens on the bed and curtains at the windows. This was my mother's sewing room, Adam explained. I thought you might be comfortable here. There's a larger bedroom across the hall if you prefer, but it hasn't been aired out in some time. Clara stepped into the room, touched by his thoughtfulness. The space was modest but pleasant, with a good-sized bed, a dresser with mirror, a small writing desk, and a rocking chair near the window. The view looked out over the back of the property toward the mountains. "This is lovely," she said honestly. "Thank you." Adam nodded, setting her trunk at the foot of the bed. "I'll leave you to get settled. Kitchen's fully stocked, help yourself to whatever you find. I'll be back before dark." He hesitated at the door. "Unless you'd like to come see the barn? I could introduce you to the horses." Clara's heart lifted at the suggestion. Horses had always been her solace, from the time she was a little girl working alongside her father. "I'd like that very much." They walked together to the large barn where Adam had just led his team. Inside, the sweet smell of hay mingled with the earthy scent of horses. Several heads poked curiously over stall doors as they entered. "This is Thunder," Adam said, stopping at the first stall where a massive black stallion regarded them with intelligent eyes. "He's my personal mount. Bit temperamental with strangers, but a finer horse you'll never find." Clara approached the stall carefully, speaking softly to the magnificent animal. "Hello, handsome fellow." The stallion's ears flicked forward, and he stretched his neck to sniff at her. Clara slowly raised her hand, letting him catch her scent before gently stroking his velvety nose. To Adam's evident surprise, Thunder leaned into her touch, nickering softly. "Well, I'll be," Adam murmured. "He usually takes weeks to warm up to people." Clara smiled, continuing to stroke the horse. "My father always said animals can sense what's in a person's heart better than most humans can." "Your father was a wise man." Adam watched her with the horse, something like admiration in his eyes. They moved through the barn, Adam introducing each animal the gentle mare he kept for occasional visitors, the sturdy workhorses, and a beautiful palomino with a flowing white mane. "This is Sunflower," he said as they reached the last stall. "She's yours if you want her." Clara turned to him in shock. "Mine?" Adam nodded. "Every person on a ranch needs their own horse. Sunflower's even-tempered but spirited. I think you'd suit each other." Clara was speechless. In the space of a few hours, this man had given her dignity, a home, and now a horse of her own. Tears pricked at her eyes as she reached out to Sunflower, who immediately nuzzled her palm. "Thank you," she whispered, not trusting her voice for more. Adam simply nodded, a gentle understanding in his eyes. "I need to tend to a few chores. Take your time here. The animals are good company." After he left, Clara leaned against Sunflower's stall, finally allowing her emotions to surface. The day had been a whirlwind from abject humiliation to this unexpected kindness. She still didn't fully understand why Adam had chosen her, but standing here among the horses, breathing in the familiar barn scents, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: belonging. By the time Clara returned to the house, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work in the kitchen, determined to prepare a proper meal for Adam. It was the least she could do to begin repaying his kindness. The pantry was indeed well stocked, as he'd said. She found flour, sugar, coffee, dried beans, and an array of canned goods. A cold box contained bacon, eggs, and milk, while a sack of potatoes sat in the corner. It was more abundance than she'd seen in months. Clara quickly mixed biscuit dough, sliced potatoes for frying, and set beans to simmer with a piece of salt pork. She found coffee grounds and set water to boil, humming softly as she worked. The familiar tasks settled her nerves and gave her a sense of purpose. When Adam returned, the kitchen was filled with delicious aromas. The table was set, and Clara was just removing golden biscuits from the oven. He stopped in the doorway, his expression one of surprise and something more softness around his eyes that made Clara's cheeks warm. "You didn't need to go to all this trouble," he said, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. It's no trouble, Clara replied. It's been too long since I had a proper kitchen to work in. She gestured to the wash basin in the corner. There's warm water if you'd like to wash up. Adam gave her a curious look but moved to the basin, rolling up his sleeves to reveal strong, tanned forearms. Clara busied herself with bringing the food to the table, trying not to watch him too obviously. When they sat down to eat, Adam waited for Clara to serve herself first, a courtesy she wasn't accustomed to. The meal began in comfortable silence, broken only when Adam took his first bite of biscuit and closed his eyes in evident pleasure. "These are magnificent," he said after swallowing. "I haven't had home cooking like this since Mother fell ill." Clara felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you. My mother taught me to cook when I was young. She always said the way to show care for others was through food." "Your mother was right," Adam said, helping himself to more potatoes. "How long has she been gone?" 7 years now. Influenza took her the winter I turned 16. Adam nodded sympathetically. "And it was just you and your father after that?" "Yes. I kept house for him and helped with the horses." Clara's voice softened with the memory. "We were a good team, the two of us, until his heart gave out last winter during that terrible cold snap." "I'm sorry," Adam said simply. "Losing both parents is a heavy burden." Clara studied him across the table. "You mentioned your mother passed recently. And your father." A shadow crossed Adam's face. "He died when I was 18, shot during a cattle dispute with a neighboring rancher." His jaw tightened. "He wasn't a perfect man, my father, but he didn't deserve to die over a water rights argument." "That's terrible," Clara said softly. Adam shook his head slightly, as if clearing away the dark memory. "It was a long time ago. Mother and I managed to keep the ranch going. She was stronger than she looked. Reminds me a bit of you in that way." The comparison warmed Clara unexpectedly. "I hope I can live up to that comparison." "I have no doubt you will." Adam finished his meal and sat back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. "Clara, there's something I should tell you about your position here." Clara tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some condition or expectation to be revealed that would shatter this fragile new beginning. "The $300 I paid today," Adam began. "I'll work to repay every penny," Clara interrupted, her words rushing out. "I'm a hard worker, I promise you. I can cook, clean, garden, help with the animals." Adam held up a hand, stopping her. "That's not what I was going to say." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "That money isn't a debt you need to repay. It was a purchase, yes, but not of you, of your freedom." Clara blinked in confusion. "I don't understand." "The law requires that I register our arrangement at the county office," Adam explained. "When I do so tomorrow, I'll be filing papers of employment, not ownership. You'll be paid a fair monthly wage for your work here. The money will be yours to keep or spend as you choose." He paused. "And if at any time you wish to leave High Meadow, you're free to do so, though I hope you'll stay." Clara stared at him, speechless. What he was offering was unprecedented. Women who were purchased at bride auctions became, effectively, the property of their buyers, not quite slaves, but certainly not free agents with rights and wages of their own. "Why would you do this?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam's expression was solemn. "Because no person should own another, no matter what local custom says. What happened in that auction house today was wrong. The mockery, the degradation, all of it." His hands tightened briefly on the edge of the table. "I couldn't stand by and watch." Tears welled in Clara's eyes, and this time she couldn't blink them back. One slipped down her cheek, then another. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping at her face. "I don't mean to cry." "Never apologize for honest emotion," Adam said quietly. He reached across the table and briefly touched her hand, a gesture so gentle it nearly undid her completely. "You've been through a great deal, Clara. But you're safe now, and you're free. What you make of that freedom is entirely up to you." Clara looked at him through her tears, this enigmatic man who had changed her life in the space of a day. "Thank you," she said, putting all the sincerity she possessed into those two simple words. Adam nodded once, then rose from the table. "The meal was wonderful. I have some paperwork to attend to in my study. Please don't worry about the dishes tonight. You've done more than enough for your first day." After he left the kitchen, Clara remained at the table, her emotions too complex to untangle. Relief, gratitude, disbelief, and beneath it all, a growing admiration for the quiet dignity of Adam Archer, a man unlike any she had ever known. The next morning, Clara woke at dawn, her body accustomed to early rising from years of ranch work. For a moment, she lay disoriented in the unfamiliar bed, then remembered the events of the previous day. The auction, the humiliation, Adam's intervention. High Meadow. She dressed quickly in one of her two serviceable dresses and pinned her thick brown hair into a simple bun. The house was quiet as she made her way downstairs, but the kitchen showed signs that Adam had already been up, a coffee cup in the sink, crumbs on the table. Clara set about making breakfast, finding eggs and bacon in the cold box. She mixed dough for bread that would bake later and put on a pot of coffee. As she worked, her mind replayed Adam's words from the previous night. "You're free." The concept was still difficult to grasp. The kitchen door opened, and Adam entered, bringing with him the fresh scent of morning air and horses. He'd clearly been out to the barn already. "Good morning," he said, seeming pleased but not surprised to find her at work. "You're up early." "Old habits," Clara replied with a small smile. "Breakfast is almost ready." Adam washed his hands at the basin, then took a seat at the table. "I'm heading into town after breakfast to file those papers I mentioned. Is there anything you need while I'm there?" Clara thought of her meager possessions. "Perhaps some fabric, if it's not too dear. I should make myself some more work clothes." She hesitated. "And thread. I noticed your shirts could use mending." Adam glanced down at his sleeve, where a small tear had been inexpertly sewn. "Mother always said I was hopeless with a needle," he admitted with a rueful smile. "Any mending you can do would be much appreciated." They ate breakfast together, discussing the tasks of the day. Adam explained more about the ranch, the 60 head of cattle, the dozen breeding horses, the vegetable garden that had gone somewhat wild in recent months. "Feel free to explore the property today," he told her. "Make yourself at home. I should be back by mid-afternoon." After he left, Clara spent the morning cleaning the main room of the house, tackling the accumulated dust and clutter with determined energy. She found the laundry room with its large copper tub and washboard and made a mental note to tackle the pile of dirty clothes the next day. She opened windows to let in fresh air and swept the wooden floors until they gleamed. Around midday, she decided to visit the horses. The weather was perfect, warm sunshine tempered by a cool breeze that carried the scent of pine from the surrounding hills. As she approached the barn, she heard male voices and remembered that Adam had mentioned 2 ranch hands. Clara hesitated, suddenly self-conscious. Would these men mock her size as the townspeople had done? Her experience at the auction was still a raw wound. Before she could retreat, a tall, lean man with a shock of red hair emerged from the barn, followed by a slightly shorter, broader man who was clearly his brother despite the difference in build. "You must be Miss Gillespie," the taller one said, removing his hat. "Boss told us you'd be joining the household." "I'm Nathan Blackwood, and this is my brother, Samuel." Both men gave respectful nods, their expressions friendly but not overly familiar. "Please call me Clara," she said, relieved by their polite greeting. Boss says you have a way with horses, Samuel said. His voice was softer than his brother's, but his handshake was firm when he offered it. That's high praise coming from him. I grew up on a horse-breeding farm, Clara explained. My father taught me everything he knew. Samuel Gillespie's daughter? Nathan asked, his eyebrows rising. His Starlight bloodline was legendary. We've got 2 of his colts in the remuda. Clara felt a surge of pride at the mention of her father's prized breeding line. I'd love to see them. The brothers exchanged a look. We've got chores to finish, Nathan said. But feel free to look around the barn. The Starlight colts are in the last 2 stalls on the right. As the men returned to their work, Clara explored the barn more thoroughly than she had the previous evening. Adam ran a tight operation. The stalls were clean, the tack well maintained, the feed room organized. She spent time with each horse, getting to know them through touch and quiet words. When she reached the Starlight colts, tears pricked her eyes. These handsome yearlings with their distinctive white blazes were among the last her father had bred before financial troubles forced him to sell most of his stock. Seeing them here, healthy and well cared for, felt like a small miracle. Your father would be proud of how they've turned out, a voice said behind her. Clara turned to find Adam standing in the barn doorway, his tall figure silhouetted against the bright day outside. She hadn't heard him return. They're beautiful, she agreed, wiping discreetly at her eyes. I can't believe you have them here. Adam walked over to join her at the stall. I bought them at the estate auction after your father passed. Couldn't bear to see them go to just anyone. He reached out to stroke the nearest colt's neck. I didn't know at the time that I'd ever meet his daughter. The simple statement hung in the air between them, laden with implications about fate and coincidence that neither was ready to examine too closely. How was town? Clara asked, changing the subject. Productive. The papers are filed. Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. And I brought you these. Clara unwrapped the package to find 3 spools of thread, a packet of needles, and a pair of small sewing scissors. Thank you, she said, touched by his thoughtfulness. There's more in the wagon, Adam added. 2 bolts of fabric, 1 blue cotton, 1 brown. The shopkeeper's wife helped me choose. Said they'd be practical for everyday wear. Clara was momentarily overwhelmed by his generosity. No one had bought her gifts since her father died. You didn't have to do that. Consider it an investment in my wardrobe's future, Adam replied with a small smile, gesturing to his torn sleeve. Those shirts won't mend themselves. They walked back to the house together, falling into step naturally despite their difference in height. Adam carried the fabric inside and set it on the table. I have something else for you, he said, reaching into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small leather pouch and handed it to her. Your first month's wages, in advance. Clara stared at the pouch in shock. But I've barely worked a day. Consider it a starting advance. You'll earn it soon enough. Adam's tone was matter of fact, brooking no argument. There's a list of monthly expenses on my desk: food deliveries, household sundries, that sort of thing. I thought you might want to take charge of that. Add whatever you think we need. The casual "we" sent an unexpected warmth through Clara's chest. Of course. I'll look it over tonight. Adam nodded, seemingly satisfied. I need to check the north pasture fences with the Blackwoods. We'll be back for supper. After he left, Clara sat at the kitchen table, fingering the soft fabric he'd brought her. Blue cotton, the color of his eyes, though she tried not to dwell on that thought. The leather pouch sat beside it, containing more money than she'd held in months. You're free, Adam had said. But as Clara looked around the kitchen, at the home that was quickly beginning to feel like hers, she wondered if freedom was what she truly wanted, or if what she was beginning to yearn for was something else entirely, something both more frightening and more precious. Belonging, connection. a place and person to call her own. She pushed the unsettling thoughts aside and rose to continue her work. There was bread to bake, floors to scrub, and a life to rebuild one day at a time. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Clara rose early each morning to prepare breakfast before Adam and the Blackwood brothers began their day's work. She spent her days cleaning the long-neglected house, cooking meals, tending to the kitchen garden, and gradually transforming High Meadow from a merely functional bachelor's residence into a true home. In the evenings, she and Adam would sit in the parlor, she with her mending or sewing, he with his account books or occasionally a novel. They talked easily about the day's events, the animals, plans for the ranch. Sometimes they simply enjoyed comfortable silence, the crackle of the fire the only sound between them. Clara learned that Adam was 32 years old, had spent 2 years at a university back east before his father's death called him home, and had a surprising knowledge of literature. He'd been running High Meadow alone since he was 24, gradually building it into one of the most respected small ranches in the territory. What she couldn't discern was whether Adam saw her as anything more than a housekeeper. He was unfailingly kind and respectful, never making her feel uncomfortable about her size or appearance. But he maintained a certain distance, never speaking of personal matters beyond the casual sharing of memories or daily observations. Clara told herself this was for the best. She had no illusions about her appeal to men. The auction had confirmed what she'd always suspected. Adam had rescued her out of decency, not desire. To imagine otherwise would only lead to heartache. Still, there were moments when she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, a softness in his normally guarded blue eyes that made her heart beat faster. One afternoon in late June, about a month after her arrival at High Meadow, Clara was in the garden harvesting early vegetables when the sound of approaching horses drew her attention. Adam and Nathan Blackwood were returning from checking fence lines, but something was wrong. Nathan was slumped in his saddle, his shirt stained with blood, while Adam rode close beside him, one hand supporting the injured man. Clara dropped her basket and ran to meet them as they reached the yard. "What happened?" she called out. "Rattlesnake spooked his horse," Adam explained tersely as he dismounted. "Nathan took a bad fall onto some rocks, possible broken ribs, and he's got a deep gash on his side." Clara immediately shifted into practical mode. "Bring him inside. I'll heat water and get bandages." Between them, they managed to get Nathan into the house and laid out on the kitchen table. The young ranch hand was conscious but pale with pain and blood loss. "Samuel's still out checking the East Range," Adam said as he cut away Nathan's shirt to reveal an ugly wound along his ribs. "Won't be back till sundown." Clara assessed the injury with a critical eye. "The bleeding's mostly stopped, but it needs cleaning and stitching." She looked at Adam. "My father was thrown from horses more times than I can count. I've sewn up worse than this." Adam nodded, trusting her judgment. "Tell me what you need." For the next hour, they worked together to treat Nathan's injuries. Clara cleaned the wound with whiskey, then neatly stitched it closed while Adam held the young man steady and offered occasional swallows of whiskey to dull the pain. 2 ribs were indeed cracked, and Clara bound them tightly with strips of clean linen. "You've got steady hands," Adam observed as he watched her work. "Comes from years of mending harnesses," Clara replied, not looking up from her task. "Human skin isn't so different from leather when you get down to it." Nathan gave a weak chuckle that turned into a groan. "Remind me not to ask what you think of the rest of me, Miss Clara." When the job was done, they helped Nathan to the small guest room off the kitchen. By the time Samuel returned, his brother was sleeping soundly, his color improved. After explaining the situation to the worried younger Blackwood, Clara and Adam retreated to the kitchen. Clara began washing the blood from her hands, suddenly aware of how intimate the past hour had been working side by side with Adam, their hands occasionally brushing, their focus united on saving Nathan from worse harm. "You were remarkable," Adam said quietly from behind her. Clara turned, drying her hands on her apron. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," Adam disagreed, stepping closer. "You didn't hesitate, didn't flinch at the blood or the task." His eyes held hers intently. "Do you know how rare that is?" Clara felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "I've never been squeamish. It's more than that." Adam was standing very close now, close enough that she could see the variations of blue in his eyes, the tiny lines at their corners. "You're extraordinary, Clara Gillespie." Before she could respond, he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek for a heartbeat longer than necessary. The simple touch sent a current through her that left her momentarily speechless. "I should check on Nathan," Adam said, his voice slightly rougher than usual. "And you should rest. It's been a trying day." He left the kitchen, leaving Clara frozen in place, her skin still tingling where his fingers had touched her. Had she imagined the look in his eyes, the tenderness in his touch? Or was it possible that Adam Archer was beginning to see her as something more than just his housekeeper? The incident with Nathan marked a subtle shift in Clara and Adam's relationship. The practiced distance Adam had maintained began to soften around the edges. He sought her company more often, finding reasons to linger in the kitchen while she cooked or to help her in the garden despite his many other responsibilities. Their conversations deepened, moving beyond the practical matters of running the ranch to more personal topics, childhood memories, hopes for the future, thoughts about the changing world around them. Clara found herself opening up to Adam in ways she hadn't with anyone since her father died, sharing her dreams and even her insecurities. One evening in early July, they sat on the front porch after supper, watching a spectacular sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. The air was warm, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. "I received a letter today," Adam said, breaking a comfortable silence, "from a horse buyer in Santa Fe. He's interested in our yearlings, particularly the Starlight colts." "That's wonderful," Clara replied. "Your breeding program is really gaining recognition." "Our breeding program," Adam corrected gently. "Your suggestions about feeding and training have made a significant difference. The Blackwoods say they've never seen the yearlings progress so quickly." Clara smiled, pleased by the acknowledgement. She'd been spending more time in the barn lately, working with the horses and offering advice based on her father's methods. "I've been thinking," Adam continued, his tone casual but with an undercurrent of something more serious. "The buyer wants to visit next month to see the horses in person. It would be helpful to have someone who really understands the Starlight bloodline here for the meeting." "Of course I'll help however I can," Clara assured him. Adam turned to face her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. "I wasn't just talking about the meeting, Clara. I was thinking more permanently." Clara's heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" "I mean that what you've brought to High Meadow goes far beyond keeping house or mending clothes." Adam's voice grew more earnest. "This place has come alive since you arrived. You've created a home here, not just for me but for the Blackwoods too. The ranch is thriving under your influence." "I've only done what needed doing," Clara said softly, though his words warmed her deeply. "You've done far more than that." Adam took a deep breath. "I'd like to offer you a partnership in the horse breeding operation. Your father's knowledge lives on in you, Clara. Together we could build something remarkable." Clara stared at him, both touched by the offer and strangely disappointed. A business partnership. Of course that's what he meant. What had she expected? What had she hoped for? "That's very generous," she managed to say. Adam studied her face intently. "You're disappointed," he observed, his perception unsettling her. "No, Clara," he interrupted gently. "In the months you've been here, I've come to value your presence in ways I never anticipated. Your practical knowledge, yes, but also your kindness, your quiet strength, your ability to create beauty from the simplest things." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "What I'm trying to say, rather poorly, is that my feelings for you have grown beyond respect and friendship." Clara felt as though the world had suddenly tilted beneath her. "Adam, you don't need to say anything," he quickly assured her. "I don't expect you to return my feelings. I know that your position here makes this complicated, and the last thing I want is for you to feel obligated or uncomfortable." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I just wanted you to know that when I look at you, I don't see my housekeeper or even just a business partner. I see a woman I've come to care for deeply." Clara's throat tightened with emotion. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined hearing such words from a man like Adam, a man who could have had any woman he wanted. "Why me?" she whispered, the question that had haunted her since the auction finally finding voice. "You could have chosen anyone." Understanding dawned in Adam's eyes. "Is that what you think? That you were some kind of consolation choice?" He shook his head, a hint of frustration in the gesture. "Clara, from the moment I saw you on that auction platform, standing tall despite their cruelty, I was drawn to you, not out of pity, but out of admiration. But your size is part of who you are," Adam said firmly, "just as my height is part of me. Would you think less of me if I were shorter? Would it change who I am inside?" "Of course not," Clara replied. "Then why would you think I see you any differently?" Adam's gaze was steady, his voice gentle but insistent. "The woman I've come to care for, to love, is the whole of you, Clara. Your generous heart, your clever mind, your capable hands. The way you hum when you're kneading bread. The gentleness you show to even the most difficult horses. The strength you display every day without fanfare or complaint." Love. He had said love. The word hung in the air between them like a tangible thing. "I never thought," Clara began, then stopped, overcome. Adam reached out slowly and took her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused against her skin. "Tell me what you're thinking," he urged softly. "If you don't share my feelings, I will respect that completely. Nothing needs to change about your position here." Clara looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face, open, honest, and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. "I've been afraid to hope," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid to believe that someone like you could see past what everyone else mocks." "I see you, Clara," Adam said simply. "All of you, and everything I see, I cherish." The sincerity in his voice broke through the last of Clara's defenses. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of release of years of doubt and self-consciousness finally beginning to dissolve. "I care for you too," she confessed, the words both terrifying and freeing. "More than I should, perhaps. More than I ever expected to care for anyone." Adam's expression transformed, joy lighting his features in a way that took Clara's breath away. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I won't rush you," he promised. "We have time to see where this leads. But I want you to know that my intentions are honorable, Clara. What I feel for you is real and lasting." As the last light of day faded and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Clara felt as though she was seeing the world anew, a world where she was valued not despite who she was, but because of it. A world where Adam Archer looked at her with love in his eyes. It was more than she had ever dared to dream. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Clara's life. Though Adam was true to his word about not rushing her, their relationship deepened with each passing day. Small touches his hand at the small of her back as they walked. Their fingers brushing as they passed each other dishes at the table became precious moments that Clara treasured. They still maintained propriety, aware of their unconventional situation and the watchful eyes of the Blackwood brothers. But in private moments walking together in the evening, sitting side by side on the porch swing Adam had repaired for her, working with the horses in the early morning light, they gradually opened their hearts to each other more fully. Adam told Clara about the lonely years after his mother died, his concerns about the ranch's future, his dreams of expanding the horse breeding operation. Clara shared her grief over losing her father, her fears about her worth as a woman, and her childhood memories of happier times on her family's farm. "Did you ever think about marrying?" Clara asked one evening as they sat in the parlor, a chessboard between them. She moved her knight, threatening his bishop. Adam considered both her question and the board before answering. There was an understanding once, years ago, with a young woman from Denver. Caroline was her name. He moved his queen, countering her threat. Her father was a business associate of mine, a banker who helped finance some of our early expansions. Clara tried to imagine this Caroline, probably petite and elegant, everything she was not. "What happened?" "She came to visit the ranch," Adam said simply. After a week, she confessed that she couldn't imagine herself living so far from civilization, said the isolation would drive her mad within a year. A small smile touched his lips. She wasn't wrong about herself. I respected her honesty, though it stung at the time. "The ranch life isn't for everyone," Clara agreed, moving her bishop to safety. "What about you?" Adam asked, studying her rather than the board. "Were there suitors before? Before my father died and I ended up on an auction block?" Clara finished with gentle irony. "No. There was a foreman who worked for my father when I was 18. He showed some interest, but I later discovered he was more interested in eventually owning the horse farm than in me." She made a self-deprecating gesture. "Besides, I've never been what men look for in a wife." Adam captured one of her pawns with more force than necessary. "Those men were fools," he said, his voice low and intense. "Blind fools who couldn't see the treasure right in front of them." Clara's cheeks warmed at his vehemence. "You're biased," she teased gently, trying to lighten the mood. "I see clearly," Adam countered. He reached across the board and took her hand, the chess game forgotten. "Clara, I need to ask you something." Her heart began to race at his serious tone. "Yes. The horse buyer from Santa Fe arrives next week. After our business is concluded, I've been invited to a social gathering at the Henderson Ranch. The territorial governor will be there, along with several influential businessmen." Adam's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture that never failed to send shivers through her. "I'd like you to accompany me as my partner in every sense." Clara hesitated. She hadn't left High Meadow since her arrival, hadn't faced the outside world or its judgments. The thought of entering a social gathering filled with strangers, wealthy, refined strangers, was intimidating. "People will talk," she said softly. "About you. About why you would choose someone like me." Adam's expression hardened slightly. "Let them talk. I'm proud to have you by my side, Clara. I want everyone to know that." His conviction gave her courage. "Then yes, I'll go with you." Adam's smile was worth any discomfort she might face. "Thank you." He glanced down at the chessboard, then back at her with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Now, I believe it's still your move." Clara laughed and returned her attention to the game, though her mind was already racing ahead to the social gathering. What would she wear? How would she behave? Would Adam truly be proud to present her to his peers? Or would he regret his invitation when faced with their reactions? Despite her concerns, Clara spent the next week preparing for both the buyer's visit and the social event. She worked alongside Adam to showcase the yearlings to their best advantage, particularly the Starlight colts that represented her father's legacy. For the Henderson gathering, she altered one of her mother's old dresses that she'd kept packed away, a deep burgundy wool with black piping that complemented her coloring and could be updated to the current fashion with a few changes. The Blackwood brothers' mother, who lived in town and occasionally visited the ranch, helped with the alterations, her skilled hands making the dress look almost new. When the day of the horse buyer's visit arrived, Clara was ready. Mr. Thornton from Santa Fe was a shrewd but fair businessman who knew horses well. He spent the morning examining each of the yearlings, paying particular attention to the Starlight colts. "Miss Gillespie," he said as they watched one of the colts trot around the corral, "your father would be proud to see his bloodline continuing in such fine specimens. Mr. Archer tells me you've had a significant hand in their training." "I've simply applied my father's methods," Clara replied modestly. "Well, those methods clearly work." Mr. Thornton turned to Adam. "I'll take all 4 yearlings, including both Starlight colts, at your asking price. They'll be a fine addition to my client's stables in California." The deal was concluded with handshakes and paperwork in Adam's study. As Mr. Thornton prepared to leave, he paused at his wagon. "I'll be at the Henderson gathering tomorrow night," he told them. "I look forward to seeing you both there." After he drove away, Adam turned to Clara with a broad smile. "That's the largest horse sale we've made in one transaction. Your father's reputation helped seal the deal." Clara felt a bittersweet pride. "I wish he could have seen this." "I think perhaps he does see it," Adam said gently. "Through you." He took her hands in his. "Thank you for being here today, for bringing your knowledge and your father's legacy to High Meadow." The tenderness in his eyes made Clara's heart swell. Impulsively, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. It was the first time she had initiated such contact, and Adam's pleased surprise was evident in his expression. "What was that for?" he asked, his voice slightly husky. "For believing in me," Clara replied simply. "For seeing value where others saw only size." Adam's hands tightened on hers. "Clara," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle for words. Whatever he had been about to say was interrupted by the arrival of the Blackwood brothers, returning from checking the herd. The moment passed, but the warmth in Adam's eyes remained, promising that the conversation wasn't over merely delayed. The next evening, as Clara finished dressing for the Henderson gathering, she tried to calm her nerves. The altered dress fit well, emphasizing her waist and complementing her ample bosom without drawing undue attention to it. She had arranged her hair in a more elaborate style than usual, with soft curls framing her face. A knock at her bedroom door startled her from her self-inspection. "Clara," Adam called softly, "are you ready? The wagon is prepared." She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, looking more handsome than she'd ever seen him in a crisp black suit, white shirt, and string tie. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he'd trimmed his beard to perfect precision. Adam, for his part, seemed equally struck by her appearance. His eyes widened, and for a moment he simply stared. "You look beautiful," he finally said, his voice reverent. Clara blushed, unused to such direct compliments. "Thank you. The dress was my mother's. Mrs. Blackwood helped me alter it." "It's not the dress," Adam said softly. "It's you." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The Henderson Ranch was one of the largest in the territory, with a sprawling main house built in the fashionable Eastern style. As their wagon approached, Clara could see dozens of other vehicles already parked in the circular drive. Lights blazed from every window, and the sound of music and conversation drifted out into the night. Adam helped Clara down from the wagon, his hand lingering at her waist. "Remember," he said quietly, "you have as much right to be here as anyone, more than most, in fact." His confidence bolstered her courage as they walked up the steps and into the brightly lit foyer where their hosts greeted them. "Archer, good to see you," boomed Mr. Henderson, a portly man with an impressive mustache. "And who is this lovely lady?" "Edward, may I present Miss Clara Gillespie?" Adam said formally. "Clara, this is Edward Henderson and his wife Margaret." "Gillespie?" Mr. Henderson repeated. "Any relation to Samuel Gillespie, the horse breeder?" "My father, sir," Clara confirmed. "Excellent man, excellent horseman," Henderson declared. "Bought a stallion from him years ago, best horse I ever owned. Delighted to meet his daughter." Mrs. Henderson, a slim woman with shrewd eyes, gave Clara a more appraising look. "Miss Gillespie, welcome. Please, both of you, come in and enjoy yourselves. The governor has just arrived, and I believe he'd be most interested in meeting the daughter of Samuel Gillespie." As they moved into the crowded parlor, Clara felt the weight of curious stares. She was taller than most of the women present and considerably more substantial in build. But Adam's hand remained firmly at the small of her back, a constant reassurance of his presence and support. They were introduced to the governor, a surprisingly unpretentious man who engaged Clara in a lengthy conversation about horse breeding after learning of her background. Other introductions followed: merchants, ranchers, bankers, all seemingly impressed by her knowledge and connection to her father's legacy. Not all reactions were positive, of course. Clara noticed whispers behind fans from some of the women, and a few of the men gave Adam questioning looks when they thought she wasn't watching. But Adam remained steadfastly by her side, his pride in her evident in every introduction, every shared glance. When the small orchestra began playing a waltz, Adam turned to Clara with a question in his eyes. "Would you do me the honor?" he asked, extending his hand. Clara hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I should warn you, I'm not particularly graceful." "I'll take my chances," Adam replied with a smile. He led her to the dance floor where several couples were already moving to the music. Clara was acutely aware of curious glances, but when Adam's arm encircled her waist and he drew her into the dance, the rest of the room seemed to fade away. "You move beautifully," he murmured as they turned in perfect time to the music. "Why would you think otherwise?" "Experience," Clara replied wryly. "The few times I danced as a girl, my partners tended to value their toes more than politeness." Adam's arm tightened slightly around her. "Their loss," he said simply. As they danced, Clara gradually relaxed into the movement, trusting Adam's lead. His hand was warm against her back, his steps sure and confident. They moved together as if they'd been dancing for years, finding a natural rhythm that matched both the music and their own heartbeats. When the waltz ended, Adam didn't immediately release her. Instead, he gazed down at her with such tenderness that Clara felt breathless. "I need to speak with you," he said softly. "Somewhere private." Clara nodded, and Adam led her through the French doors onto a wide veranda that wrapped around the house. They found a secluded corner, partially screened by potted palms, where the sounds of the party were muted and the moonlight cast a silver glow over the garden beyond. Adam took both her hands in his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "Clara," he began, "I've been trying to find the right moment, the perfect words, but I'm beginning to think there's no such thing." He took a deep breath. "When I saw you at that auction, something inside me recognized you not just as someone in need, but as someone I had been waiting for without knowing it." Clara's heart began to race, but she remained silent, letting him continue. "These past months have been the happiest of my life," Adam went on. "You've brought warmth and purpose back to High Meadow. You've brought laughter and beauty into days that were merely functional before. You've seen parts of me that I've never shown anyone." His voice dropped lower, intimate and intense. "I love you, Clara." not despite your size or appearance, but including those things they're part of the remarkable woman you are. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but she blinked them back, not wanting to miss a moment of his face in the moonlight. I had planned to wait longer before asking this, Adam continued. But tonight, seeing you among all these people, watching you shine despite your fears, I can't wait another day. He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Clara Gillespie, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? He opened the box to reveal a ring, a simple but elegant gold band set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was beautiful, understated, perfect. This was my grandmother's, Adam explained. My mother always said it should go to the woman who would truly be a partner to me, in every sense of the word. His eyes searched hers. That's you, Clara. If you'll have me. Clara looked from the ring to Adam's face, so open, so vulnerable in this moment. All her life, she had assumed that love and marriage were not meant for women like her. She had made peace with that, focusing instead on being useful, on making her own way. Never had she imagined that a man like Adam Archer would look at her with such devotion, would offer her not just his name but his heart. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, Adam, I will marry you. Joy transformed his features. With slightly trembling hands, he slipped the ring onto her finger, where it fit as if made for her. Then he drew her into his arms and, for the first time, kissed her fully on the lips. The kiss was gentle at first, a question and an offering. But when Clara responded, wrapping her arms around his neck and pressing closer, Adam deepened the kiss, pouring months of restrained longing into the contact. When they finally parted, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you made those biscuits, he confessed with a smile in his voice. Clara laughed softly. If I'd known that was all it took, I would have baked them twice a day. Adam cradled her face in his hands, suddenly serious again. You know that people will talk, that some won't understand why I chose you. Does that bother you? Clara asked, a last flicker of insecurity surfacing. Not in the slightest, Adam assured her. Let them talk. I know what I found in you. Clara, a partner, a friend, a love I never expected. His thumbs gently stroked her cheeks. I'm the fortunate one in this match, and anyone who can't see that is blind indeed. From inside the house came the sound of the orchestra beginning another waltz. Adam stepped back and offered Clara his hand with a formal bow. Mrs. Archer-to-be, he said with a smile that made her heart skip. Would you do me the honor of this dance? Clara placed her hand in his, the pearl of her engagement ring catching the moonlight. The honor is mine, Mr. Archer. As they rejoined the gathering, heads turned at the sight of them together, Adam tall and handsome in his formal attire, Clara radiant in her burgundy dress, her face glowing with happiness. But this time, Clara didn't notice the stares or whispers. All she saw was Adam, his blue eyes never leaving hers as they moved across the floor in perfect harmony. For the first time in her life, Clara Gillespie felt not just accepted, but cherished. Not just valued, but adored. Not despite who she was, but because of it. And in that moment, on that dance floor, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home not just in High Meadow Ranch, but in Adam Archer's heart. The return journey to High Meadow that night was filled with a quiet joy that needed few words. Clara sat close to Adam on the wagon seat, her hand in his, the pearl ring on her finger catching occasional glints of moonlight. The stars seemed brighter, the air sweeter, the future stretching before them full of promise. When would you like to be married? Adam asked as the familiar silhouette of the ranch house appeared on the horizon. Clara considered the question. I don't need a grand wedding. Something simple, here at High Meadow, with just a few friends. Adam nodded his agreement. Fall would be good. After the cattle drive and before winter sets in. Late October, perhaps. That gives us 3 months to prepare, Clara said, already mentally listing what would need to be done. Is there anyone you want to invite beyond the Blackwoods and their family? A few business associates, perhaps. My mother's sister lives in Denver. I'd like her to be there. Adam glanced at Clara. What about you? Is there anyone from your past you'd want present? Clara thought of her father's few remaining friends, scattered across the territory. Perhaps 1 or 2 of Papa's old partners. They were kind to me after he died. She hesitated. And I'd like to find Reverend Michaels, if possible. He was our minister when I was growing up. He baptized me, taught me in Sunday school. It would mean a lot to have him perform the ceremony. Then we'll find him, Adam promised. I want this day to be everything you've dreamed of, Clara. They were quiet for a moment. The only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the steady clop of the horse's hooves. Did you? Adam asked suddenly. Dream of your wedding day, when you were younger? Clara smiled at the memory. Sometimes, though in my dreams, I was always somehow different, smaller, prettier. She glanced at him. I never imagined a groom who would want me exactly as I am. Adam reined the horses to a stop, though they were still a short distance from the house. In the moonlight, his expression was solemn as he turned to face her. I wouldn't change a single thing about you, Clara Gillespie, he said with quiet intensity. Not your size, not your hands roughened by work, not the freckles across your nose or the scar on your chin from when you fell from your first horse. His hand cupped her cheek. You are perfectly exactly who you are meant to be, who I need you to be. Clara leaned into his touch, still marveling that this was real, that this good man truly wanted her as his wife. As are you, she whispered. Exactly who I need you to be. Adam's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, a pledge of all the kisses to come throughout their life together. When he finally drew back, his smile held a hint of mischief. You know, he said conversationally as he flicked the reins to set the horses moving again. 3 months is a long time to wait. Clara raised an eyebrow. Adam Archer, are you suggesting something improper? Not at all, he assured her with mock seriousness. I am a gentleman, after all. I merely thought we might consider a slightly shorter engagement. His sideways glance was hopeful. 6 weeks, perhaps? That would still give us time to find your Reverend Michaels and make proper arrangements. Clara laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet night. Eager, are we? To make you my wife? Without question. Adam's voice grew more serious. To wake beside you each morning. To fall asleep with you in my arms each night. To build a life and a family together? He reached for her hand, bringing it to his lips. Yes, Clara. I am very eager indeed. The mention of family sent a flutter through Clara's heart. You want children? She asked softly. Very much, Adam confirmed. With you, I want everything life has to offer. A home filled with laughter, children running through the halls, growing old together on the porch as we watch the sunset. He glanced at her. What about you? I've always wanted children, Clara admitted. I just never thought. She trailed off, still adjusting to this new reality where her deepest wishes might actually come true. Well, now you can think about it, Adam said gently. About our children, our future. He guided the wagon into the yard and brought the horses to a halt. So, what do you say? 6 weeks. Clara pretended to consider, though in truth, she was as eager as he to begin their life together. I suppose that would be acceptable, she said with feigned reluctance, though it hardly gives me time to prepare a proper trousseau. Adam's laugh was low and warm as he helped her down from the wagon. My dear Clara, You could come to me in sackcloth, and I would still be the most fortunate man in Colorado Territory. Their wedding took place exactly 6 weeks later, on a perfect September day when the aspen trees were turning to gold and the air held the first crisp hint of autumn. Clara stood before the mirror in her bedroom, soon to be their bedroom, hardly recognizing the woman who gazed back at her. Her wedding dress, made from cream-colored silk ordered specially from Denver, was the most beautiful garment she had ever owned. The design emphasized her natural curves while the color complemented her auburn hair, which hung in loose curls down her back, adorned with small white flowers. A knock at the door preceded Mrs. Blackwood's entrance. The older woman had taken Clara under her wing in the weeks leading up to the wedding, offering maternal guidance that Clara had sorely missed since her own mother's passing. "Oh, my dear," she said, her eyes misting at the sight of Clara. "You look absolutely radiant." "Do I?" Clara asked, smoothing her hands nervously over the silk. "I'm not too much." Mrs. Blackwood's expression grew stern. "Clara Gillespie, you stop that right now. You are exactly as the good Lord made you to be, and that man waiting downstairs thinks you're the most beautiful woman in creation." Her face softened. "And he's right." Clara hugged the older woman impulsively. "Thank you for everything." "It's time," Mrs. Blackwood said, stepping back and adjusting one of the flowers in Clara's hair. "Your groom is waiting, and if the way he's been pacing is any indication, he's about at the end of his patience." Downstairs, the main room of the ranch house had been transformed. Autumn flowers and greenery adorned every surface, and rows of chairs accommodated the 30-some guests the Blackwood family, neighbors from surrounding ranches, a few of Adam's business associates, and 2 elderly gentlemen who had been partners with Clara's father. And at the front of the room, beside Reverend Michaels, whom Adam had indeed found living in a small parish near Denver, stood Adam himself, tall and handsome in a new black suit, his eyes fixed on the staircase, waiting for his bride. When Clara appeared at the top of the stairs, a collective murmur went through the assembled guests. But Clara didn't notice. All she saw was Adam's face, the wonder in his expression, the love in his eyes as he watched her descend. Reverend Michaels, a kindly man with silver hair who remembered Clara from her childhood, conducted the ceremony with personal warmth and spiritual gravity. When it came time for the vows, Adam's voice rang out clear and confident. "I, Adam Henry Archer, take you, Clara Elizabeth Gillespie, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love and cherish you all the days of my life, to honor and respect you, to stand by your side in good times and in hardship, in sickness and in health, until death parts us." His eyes never left hers as he added, "You are the heart of my home, the companion of my days, the love I never expected but will always treasure." Clara's voice trembled slightly but grew stronger with each word. "I, Clara Elizabeth Gillespie, take you, Adam Henry Archer, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love and support you all the days of my life, to respect and honor you, to walk beside you through whatever life may bring, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, until death parts us." She took a deep breath before continuing. "You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I was discounted, and loved me when I thought love was beyond my reach. I will spend my life striving to be worthy of your heart." When Reverend Michaels pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was gentle but thorough, drawing a few good-natured chuckles from the guests. As they turned to face their friends as Mr. and Mrs. Archer, Clara's heart was so full she thought it might burst with joy. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter, music, and abundant food prepared by Mrs. Blackwood and several neighboring ranch wives. As dusk fell, lanterns were lit in the yard, and Nathan Blackwood produced a fiddle, striking up lively tunes that soon had everyone dancing. Adam held Clara close during a slower melody, their bodies swaying together beneath the starlit sky. "Happy, Mrs. Archer?" he murmured against her hair. More than I ever imagined possible, Clara replied, resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. And you, I have everything I ever wanted, right here in my arms. Adam drew back slightly to look into her eyes. Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? Clara smiled. That I was the largest woman at the auction? That you were the strongest, Adam corrected. Standing there with your head high despite their cruelty. I knew in that moment that you were someone extraordinary. His arms tightened around her. I just didn't know then that you would become my everything. As the last guests departed and night settled fully over High Meadow, Adam and Clara stood on the porch, watching the retreating wagons. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, they were the picture of contentment. Shall we go in, wife? Adam asked softly. The night grows cool. Clara looked up at him, at the love and desire evident in his gaze, and felt an answering warmth spread through her. Yes, husband, she replied. Let's go home. Adam swept her into his arms, ignoring her half-hearted protests about her weight, and carried her across the threshold of the house that had once been his alone and was now truly theirs. As he climbed the stairs toward their bedroom, Clara wrapped her arms around his neck and marveled at how completely her life had changed in the space of a few short months. From the humiliation of the auction block to the sacred vows of marriage, from loneliness to love, from uncertainty to belonging, the journey had been extraordinary, and it had only just begun. In the years that followed, High Meadow Ranch flourished under the joint stewardship of Adam and Clara Archer. Their horse breeding operation gained national recognition, with buyers coming from as far as New York and San Francisco to purchase stock descended from Samuel Gillespie's famous Starlight line. The house that Clara had transformed from a bachelor's dwelling into a warm home became even more vibrant with the arrival of children. First Nicholas, a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's generous heart, born just over a year after their wedding. 2 years later came Nora, a lively girl with auburn curls and a natural affinity for horses that had both her parents beaming with pride. Clara's fears about passing her size to her children proved unfounded. Both grew tall and strong, but with builds that blended the best qualities of both parents. More importantly, they grew up in a home where differences were celebrated rather than mocked, where strength came in many forms, and where love was the foundation of everything. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Adam presented Clara with a gift, the deed to the neighboring property, which he had purchased to expand their horse breeding operation. I'm renaming it Starlight Ranch, he told her as they stood on a rise overlooking the combined properties. In honor of your father's legacy. Clara, deeply moved, wrapped her arms around her husband. He would be so proud to see what we've built. What you've built, Adam corrected gently. Your knowledge, your instincts with the horses, those have been the key to our success. He kissed her forehead. I just provided the land. And the love, Clara added softly. Don't forget that part. Adam's arms tightened around her. Never, he promised. Not for a single day. As the sun set over their expanded kingdom, painting the mountains in gold and the meadows in amber light, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here from the lowest moment of her life to its greatest heights. She had once been mocked for her size, had believed herself unworthy of love or happiness. But Adam had seen past the superficial to the woman beneath, had valued what others discounted, had loved what others ridiculed. What are you thinking, love? Adam asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Clara smiled up at him. This man who had changed her life with 6 simple words spoken in an auction house years ago. She's the only one I want. I'm thinking that sometimes, the thing we believe to be our greatest weakness turns out to be our greatest strength, she replied. And that love, when it's real, sees beyond appearances to the heart. Adam nodded, understanding as he always did. Your size gave you strength, physical strength, yes, but also strength of character. The fortitude to endure mockery with dignity. The resilience to begin again after losing everything. His eyes, still as blue and intense as the day they met, held hers with unwavering devotion. I didn't fall in love with you despite who you are, Clara. I fell in love with you because of who you are, all of you, exactly as you are. As they walked hand in hand back toward the house where their children waited, Clara felt the perfect rightness of their life together, this partnership built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and boundless love. From the auction block to this moment, the journey had been unexpected but perfect in its own way, leading her exactly where she was meant to be. In Adam's arms. At High Meadow Ranch. Home. 10 years after their wedding, Clara and Adam Archer had established themselves as one of the most successful horse breeding operations in the West. The Starlight bloodline, once in danger of being lost when Clara's father died, now produced champions that commanded premium prices throughout the country. High Meadow Ranch had expanded to include not just the original property and the adjoining Starlight Ranch, but also a training facility where young horsemen and women came to learn the Archer Gillespie methods. Clara, drawing on her father's teachings and her own intuitive understanding of horses, had developed a training approach that emphasized gentleness and partnership rather than domination, revolutionary concepts in an era when breaking a horse often meant literally breaking its spirit. Mrs. Archer, could you show me again how you get Thunderbolt to respond to just the pressure of your legs? Asked a young apprentice one autumn afternoon as Clara worked with a spirited 3-year-old in the round pen. Clara smiled at the earnest young woman, the daughter of a wealthy Denver businessman who had defied convention to pursue her passion for horses. The secret isn't in the pressure, Abigail. It's in the release. The horse learns from the release of pressure, not its application. She demonstrated, using the subtlest of cues to guide the magnificent black colt through a series of turns and stops, her substantial frame moving with surprising grace in the saddle. From the fence where he'd been observing, Adam called out, "Dinner in an hour, love. The children are back from town with Samuel." Clara acknowledged him with a wave, then returned her attention to her student. "That's enough for today. Thunderbolt has worked hard. Remember, always end on a positive note." As the apprentices led the horses back to the barn, Clara joined Adam at the fence. Despite a decade of ranch work adding lines to his face and a touch of silver at his temples, he was still the most handsome man she'd ever known. And the way he looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in his world had never changed. "How was your meeting with the Army representative?" she asked as they walked together toward the main house. "Productive. They want 20 horses for the fort, trained to our specifications." Adam slipped his arm around her waist. "Though he was disappointed you weren't there. Apparently, your reputation has spread as far as Washington." Clara laughed. "Hardly. But it's good to know the military is finally recognizing that horses respond better to kindness than cruelty." At the house, they found 10-year-old Nicholas and 8-year-old Nora setting the table under the watchful eye of Mrs. Blackwood, who still came to help several days a week despite being well into her 60s. "Papa!" Nora exclaimed, abandoning her task to run to her father. "Mr. Thompson at the general store says our horses are famous all the way to California." Adam scooped her up, her long legs dangling as he hugged her. "Is that so? Well, Mr. Thompson would know. He hears all the news that passes through Sweetwater Creek." Nicholas, more reserved like his father, but with Clara's gentle heart, finished placing the last fork before greeting his parents. "Samuel let me drive the wagon part of the way home," he announced proudly. "Did he now?" Clara ruffled her son's dark hair. "You're becoming quite the young man." Later, after dinner had been eaten, lessons reviewed, and children tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Clara and Adam sat on the porch swing that had become their evening ritual. A crisp October breeze carried the scent of pine and approaching winter, and Adam draped a quilt over their laps as they gazed at the star-filled sky. "I had a letter from Mr. Thornton today," Adam said, referring to the horse buyer from Santa Fe who had purchased their first Starlight colts years ago. "He's planning a visit next month. Says he has a proposition for us." "Oh," Clara leaned against her husband's solid warmth. "What sort of proposition?" "He didn't specify, but he mentioned something about expanding our breeding program internationally. Apparently, European buyers have been asking about American stock with our horse's reputation." Clara considered this. "Europe? That's a significant step." "It is," Adam agreed. "One we don't have to take if you don't want to. We're doing well enough as we are." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the gentle creak of the swing the only sound besides the distant hoot of an owl. "Do you ever wonder," Clara asked suddenly, "what would have happened if you hadn't been in town that day? If you hadn't come to the auction?" Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I try not to think about it," he admitted. "The idea of you ending up with someone who didn't value you properly." He shook his head. "But I was there. Providence, remember?" Clara nodded, remembering his words from that first day. "Still, it's remarkable how life can turn on a single moment, a single decision." "My best decision," Adam said firmly. "Walking into that auction house was the best thing I ever did." He turned to look at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "But I've always wondered if I hadn't been there, what would you have done? You're so strong, so capable. I can't imagine you would have simply accepted whatever fate handed you." Clara considered this. "I'd like to think I would have found a way out eventually. But the truth is, I was at my lowest point that day. My father gone, our farm lost, my future uncertain." She reached for his hand beneath the quilt. "You didn't just save me from public humiliation, Adam. You gave me a chance to become the person I was meant to be." "You were already that person," Adam insisted. "I just provided the space for you to flourish." He brought her hand to his lips. "And you've given me far more in return: a true partner, beautiful children, a home filled with love." Clara smiled at the familiar sentiment, one they'd exchanged in various forms throughout their years together. "We saved each other, then." "Indeed we did, Mrs. Archer." Adam's kiss was as tender as it had been on their wedding day, a perfect blend of familiar comfort and enduring passion. As they made their way inside later, arm in arm in the quiet of their sleeping household, Clara reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past decade. From the cruel mockery of strangers to international recognition for her work with horses. From believing herself unlovable to being deeply, completely loved by a man who saw her true worth from the very beginning. In their bedroom, as Adam drew her into his arms with the same reverence he'd always shown, Clara gave silent thanks for that fateful day at the auction, for the moment when humiliation had turned to hope, when rejection had transformed into acceptance, when a cowboy's simple declaration had changed the course of her life forever. "She's the only one I want." 10 words that had opened the door to a lifetime of love, partnership, and belonging. 10 words that had brought her home.